Obviously, a chakram is not a semi-magical super weapon, but how does it compare to other throwable metal objects? Let's do some tests to get a better idea. For that purpose, Adam Chaladine and Wolflund kindly offered to send me a set of chakrams as well as the top dog throwing knife. All linked in the description below, like usual. Accidental camera destruction in 3, 2, 1. This was supposed to be a joke. I'm a dumbass, don't do what I do. And more importantly, learn from your mistakes. Oh yeah. Let's start with a basic throwing knife. Why? Because if you chop it in half, duplicate and rotate it, and then duplicate and rotate again, you get a throwing star. And what's a chakram? A throwing star with an infinite number of points, and a circular cutout in the center. So basically a chakram is an infinity knife. Am I making sense yet? On the one hand, it's easier because it's edge all around, but on the other hand, depending on the material, it may have trouble to actually stick. As opposed to the knife, which has less angles at which it can hit, but can stick more easily. The interesting thing is a larger throwing weapon isn't only capable of doing more damage, it also makes it easier. For one, because the added mass stabilizes it in flight, and also, if I whip out this tactical comma here, which has a certain size in half compared to a throwing knife, it's easier for me to gauge the distance because the larger it is, the longer it takes to rotate 360. So if I look at my target right here and get a feel for this thing, I have a fairly good idea of where I need to be. So say here. And literally first attempt. No editing trickery or anything, and I'm not even that experienced, but it's much easier with this. This tactical tomahawk here, the SOG Fast Hawk, is quite a bit smaller, so it makes it a little bit more difficult. But on the other hand, it has 2 pointy ends that you can stick. So if you misjudge the distance and you're like half a rotation too far away, it'll still stick. Let's see how this goes. So again, no trickery here. I'm just gonna try to gauge the distance. So I know that this is going to rotate a little bit faster. So if I get closer, maybe about here. All right. It wasn't perfect. As you can see here, the handle hit it. You know, ideally it should stick like this, but still not bad. So what if I misjudge it and I'm just a little bit further away? Bonk. This knife, or maybe I should call it a throwing spike, is a little trickier because it's not quite as stable. In flight it can wobble more and it rotates faster. So it's harder for me to judge how many rotations it needs. I'm thinking here. All right, I'm on a roll. I didn't actually expect that to stick. I mean, I tossed it way low, but still. It becomes a lot more difficult when I'm further away. Do I have to throw it this way? Do I have to throw it that way? I don't know. Let's find out. Yeah, still not far enough. Or too far, who knows? That's kind of the problem with this, right? You gotta figure out distance and how hard you throw, which of course makes it entirely unsuitable for use in combat. Now people debate how useful throwing knives even are at all in a combat situation, but if anything, no spin. No spin gets rid of that trouble because there are no rotations to estimate, but it's a much more difficult technique to learn. I haven't done no spin in a while. There we go. Improvised throwing implement. Problem with this is it's awfully light. So a larger saw would be better, but hey. It works at least at short distances. I would expect it to be much harder the further you are away because that instability can start to mess with you. But the nice thing is I don't need to worry about how far away I am overall because one of these points here is definitely going to stick. Kind of works, but there's limited penetration. That's what she said. Before we move on to the chakrams, just a quick shameless self-promotion. If you like this stuff, maybe I can talk you into supporting the channel through Patreon, which also gets you some perks like access to bonus content, an exclusive Discord server, and other fun stuff. Or maybe you'd like some nifty swag. I just put up merch with the updated channel logo. There are also affiliate links for cool stuff to shop. I appreciate the support. So with the chakram, it's the same kind of deal. It doesn't matter how far you're away. It will rotate, but it doesn't matter. Except in this case, it kind of does, because there is this blunt section. There's like a 1 out of 8 or so chance that it hits with this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, 1 out of 5. I can't estimate shit. Well, that's an odd one. It actually went in with the unsharpened part. All right, so here, boom, as long as it doesn't hit with the blunt end, and it almost did here. See right there? So in my opinion, you really don't need this, because you can still handle it somewhat safely. You know, when you withdraw it, you just hook around the inside of the chakram, which is blunt, and then you can handle it this way. It's still overall kind of hazardous to handle when you just try to wear it in some kind of way. You draw it or you pick it up or whatever it is, like you always have to worry about that sharp edge all around. It's not here, but you still have to deal with most of it. The one application where it does make sense is used as an improvised melee weapon, because now you can hold on to that part much more safely than you could here, because pushing a curved edge into your palm and then trying to slice with it, that's asking for trouble. That's asking for stitches. Time to whip out the big boy, because for longer distance throws, it's gonna be easier. Fly, you fool! It's not perfect. It doesn't stick absolutely every time. I would say that's where throwing stars and saw blades have an advantage. They stick no matter what. But unfortunately here in Canada we can't have those, because the law had to step in after the great ninja epidemic of 1985, where assassinations with ninja stars were rampant. No, that never happened. Ooh, that seemed like a solid hit, but it just wouldn't stick. Throw a bit harder. Just makes it bounce harder. Okay, let's try this sucker here. Oh, I like that. That ain't too shabby. Definitely has some power to it. I'm not even gonna bother with the backhand throw when I tested an original chakram. It just felt so weak and didn't do a whole lot. Now a pro frisbee thrower might do better at that, but I won't. What I did just now is the opposite, inside throw, which is much more powerful, I find. Let's see if I can get this water bottle up close. I put it up against the branch because I figured it would just bounce all over the place if I tried it freestanding. There we go. Now to test the suspicion I have. I don't expect it to be that effective against cloth. I feel like that has a fairly high chance of making it bounce off. This is fairly thin cloth, so I'm just gonna wrap it. There's a couple of times, nothing too crazy, you know, still thinner than winter clothing. Same distance, and I'm gonna try to replicate the throw as best I can. Okay. Not bad, actually. That did go through. It didn't go as far as before. Now a layer of foam. Overlap it in the back, cloth in the front. Let's see how it goes. Okay, same thing. Ah, that's what I was expecting the first time around, pretty much. Missed. That's useful. Okay, I'll throw harder. I don't think I hit it quite right. One more. Yeah, no, it's not getting through. Now, of course, you could throw way harder, but I'm comparing like to like. I was trying to make the amount of force pretty close to the same every time. This wouldn't be actual armor. This is just, you know, sturdy clothing, padded clothing maybe. Okay, now with the knife, same short distance. Let's see if I can even do it with no spin. Okay, I did hit it, but it was too weak. I don't have the experience to be able to throw hard without causing a rotation. Oh, hang on, did I hit it after all? I must have. It squirts. It's getting too leaky, no point in trying anymore. The historical way these were supposedly thrown is by spinning them on the finger and then launching them like this. I'm quite skeptical of that because it just seems like there's very little power you can generate. At the same time, dismissing something when you lack the knowledge and skill is a little ignorant. So I guess I'm just kind of agnostic on the topic. Maybe it was done this way, maybe it wasn't. Either way, so my observation is that while these work quite well against certain targets, and they do slice, they do penetrate and all that, but I highly doubt their effectiveness against clothing and even light armor on the battlefield or in a small melee or self-defense situation or whatever it might be. It's definitely a matter of hit placement. I mean, it always is. But there are a lot of areas that are kind of discounted here in my view. Like, taking one of these to the chest would hurt, but I do not think that these would cut straight through a rib and, sever the heart or whatever. An arm, maybe, because it concentrates it more on a smaller area. So that might do more, but at the same time, there's less mass behind an arm. It could just be pushed out of the way, so not sure about that. Now, fingers, especially fingers wrapped around a weapon, if you take one of those, oh yeah, that's gonna do it. Or the head, I would expect these to stick in the bone. I don't know if they would go far enough to do incapacitating or lethal damage. I mean, the bigger one, more likely. On the other hand, a spike will definitely penetrate. Taking this to the chest, nah, this would be very dangerous. Anywhere really, chest, limbs, head, it would very likely penetrate. Through clothing, through light armor, possibly medium armor, definitely medium armor. Obviously, these get bonus points for ease of use. You don't have to worry about distance and rotation, except with these, you do have to an extent, because there's about 1 in 5 chance that it'll hit with the blunt section rather than sharp. This doesn't have that problem. Like a little saw blade, you can throw that at any distance and it's going to stick. It's just not going to stick terribly far. Throwing star, particularly with long spikes or blades, is going to be much better than this. Knife is a little trickier unless you're really good at no spin throw, which takes a little bit longer to develop. A tomahawk or even a larger axe is easier than a throwing knife with spin throw, but you still need to figure out the correct distance. Finally, there's one more important category: ease of carry. Whether it be for battlefield use or self-defense or even sport, it always matters to some degree. This is where knives win. Good old Danny Trejo has shown us just how many knives you can carry on yourself. You can stack quite a lot of them on a vest or on a belt or what have you. Chakram is not quite as easy. Now, in one sense, the nice thing is that you can stack a whole bunch of them together. And apparently the way they were carried historically was as bracelets, essentially, like on the arm. Not the most convenient, is now you have a sharp edge on your arm, so you can move the same way that you normally do. But they were also carried on a turban. That actually makes a lot more sense this way. They're not getting in the way of your daily activities as much. You can just reach up, pull one off, and throw it, presumably. But I suppose you could also hang a stack of them off hooks on your belt, perhaps, and just have them dangle there, and then you can just kind of pull them off one by one, which is actually not that easy because you're gonna get your finger in between them. So that may not actually be that easy, but there's some ways you can do it. The larger they are, the more cumbersome, of course, it becomes. Arguably still easier than this, and definitely something of this size, because at least you can stack them. You can't exactly stack these very well. And, then hanging off the belt, you can do it, but you cannot carry anywhere near as many as you could chakrams, and especially throwing knives. I have an original chakram, or chakkar, or quoit as they're also called. When comparing it to the ones made by Wolfland, the diameter is actually very close, but these here are a much wider blade, so these are also heavier. And the other difference is that the original has an airfoil shape, which means the top is curved and the bottom is flat. That's supposed to stabilize it during flight, which of course only applies if you throw it like this. I've tossed it relatively far with a fairly stable flight pattern, but it's also easy to mess it up just a little bit and cause it to wobble. Generally, I prefer to throw it vertically or diagonally, in which case the cross-section doesn't make a difference. What does make a difference is this is made of better steel than the original. And the thickness also helps make it more durable overall. There's really only one spot that has a little bit of edge damage here, but overall, they held up beautifully. Okay, so in my opinion, the best throwing weapon, or at least my favorite, is sort of this, but even better, a hurl bat, which is a throwing axe with additional spikes. So typically it has a spike on top, on the opposite side, and at the bottom of the handle. So this way, it pretty much doesn't matter how you throw it and what distance you throw it, it's going to penetrate, and with a lot of force, because those things, depending on the size, can be quite hefty. Obviously, problem with that is wearing them. You know, how many of those can you carry really? Either that or a throwing cross, which I've covered in another video as well, or a throwing star, just a much larger one, because the small ones just don't penetrate that far. Ones with way longer spikes, yeah, more mass, more stability, more damage. That's about it. Hope you found this interesting. Let me know what you think. What's your favorite throwing weapon? What do you think about chakrams and all of that? Link, of course, to where you get these in the description below. I do like these quite a bit. I wish they were sharp all the way around, but of course you can always do that yourself. You know, grind them on a belt grinder or something. And yeah, these are pretty cool. These are a lot of fun to throw, and I can definitely recommend them. Thanks for watching. Fuck. Here's a practical advantage of the chakram. It's easier to find if you botch the throw and it glances off and is catapulted who knows where. The knife can bury itself in the ground. The chakram usually doesn't. And it's a little bit easier to see as well. I have no idea where that went. Also, a long black object in the forest. It's not that easy to see as opposed to a disc, which stands out a little bit more. Basically, the large chakram you can't lose for the most part, unless you throw it into the swamp, I suppose. But if it sinks into the swamp, you gotta make a new one, which also sinks into the swamp. But the third one is gonna be fine. Right, it's gonna take me a little while to find. Sneaky, I almost didn't find it. Look where it went. Gotcha. Fuck out of here. Fucking dead tree limbs. Fuck. Oh no, it went in the ground. So it's the worst case scenario when the knife goes into the ground and gets camouflaged immediately. Oh boy. Oh, there it is. That didn't take too long.